The United States and China are rolling out bachelor taxes. I wanted to talk about this subject a little bit. There was a comment on one of my videos where I discussed the Roman Empire and the fall of the Roman Empire, and specifically the things that led to the fall of the Roman Empire. Solar says, wow, didn't the Romans implement a bachelor tax to punish unmarried men just prior to the final collapse of their whole society? And some of you might remember that I talked about how, when the Roman Empire was beginning to collapse, what they did was they implemented no fault divorces. The women began divorcing their husbands, running off with gladiators, in some case, control alt deleting their husbands. The men began refusing to marry. I believe it was Augustus Caesar who said that unmarried men were worse than all of the criminals in all of the Roman Empire, and then he listed them off. He said that they were worse than all of the people who the people who deleted other people. They were worse than all of the grapeists. They were worse than all of the liars and thieves. He listed them off. He listed them off. And unmarried men were not allowed to go to the Colosseum. They were not allowed to go to view any public events or entertainment. They were they were forced to run in the streets during the winter time in the form of a chain gang, and they still refused to marry. And then, as the empire began to further collapse, they, the empire got the great idea. Okay, we'll go ahead and implement a bachelor's tax. And the bachelor's tax, of course, was an extraordinary failure, which precluded the fall of the Roman Empire. As you can see here, the very unsuccessful history of bachelor taxes. Since 1821, a variety of states have made numerous attempts to tax single men who don't have kids. Yet, despite the failure of every one of these measures, MRAs believe such a financial penalty still exists today. So, if there's anything the manosphere doesn't like more than feminism, is the notion of taxing single men at higher rates than married people, known as a bachelor tax. The practice first emerged in ancient Rome as a way to penalize unmarried individuals and couples without kids. The concept was simple: either shack up with a spouse and pop out a baby, or pay the price. So when men basically said, yeah, we're no longer going to marry, we're not going to have children, because this is what ended up happening. The Roman Empire went full mouse utopia. And instead of learning from their mistakes, they basically began punishing men for what was happening. They gave women all of these rights, they gave them no fault divorce. And then when women started to tear down society, they basically turned around and tried to punish the men, and punish the men severely for, for what was happening, because men basically walked away, or in some cases ran away. Since the U.S. was founded, there's never been a bachelor tax at the federal level, but in 1821, Missouri passed the first state based version requiring single men over the age of 21 to pay $1 a year. It wasn't exactly embraced. According to KCRU Public Radio, one local bachelor told the Missouri Intelligencer on June 4th, 1821, that taxing a portion of the inhabitants for no other reason than they are not married, and exempting from it those that are, and is, in my opinion, unconstitutional, impolitic, partial, oppressive, and the perfection of legislative absurdity. Not surprisingly, the tax ended after just 1 year, but similar taxes would go on to be proposed, and nearly always obliterated by 8 additional states over the next 100 years. In New York, in 1825, it was meant to replace a tax on dogs. So they tried to replace a tax on dogs with a tax on unmarried men. Michigan followed suit in 1837 with the first of 9 failed attempts. So they tried 9 different times to tax unmarried single men. Holy cow. It would eventually be argued in the Wolverine state that women who said no to marriage proposals should be the ones who had to pay up, but that didn't stick either. This is intriguing. Meanwhile, in 1857, Connecticut dismissed the motion to introduce a bachelor tax, arguing that bachelors were already taxed heavily enough. As you can see, men are already being taxed and men pay the majority of all taxes in society. Okay? When men pass away, we leave a deficit on the economy. When women pass away, no. When men pass away, we leave a surplus on the economy. Correction. We leave a surplus on the economy. When women pass away, they leave a deficit. If men began working fewer hours, drawing more from social welfare programs, and contributing less to the economy, what ultimately ends up happening is that the burden and strain that women put on the economy would result in us essentially going bankrupt. And that's where men walking away could essentially bankrupt the economy. It would have okay. So let's keep on going. In 1890, Wyoming tabled a $2.50 bachelor tax. That's insane. In 1911, a Georgia assemblyman proposed a $50 tax on bachelors to help fund schools. Oh my God. Guys, we literally went from $1 to $2.50. $2.50 in 1980 to 20, all right? $2.50 in 1980 to just at 21 years later, they wanted to tax men at a $50 tax rate. $50. 50. Guys, can you understand how insanely absurd that is? That's a crazy amount of money in 1950. In 1950, no, in 1911. In 1911, oh my gosh. Okay, a decade later, in 1921, Montana passed a $3 tax on men who weren't the heads of families before it got shut down in the state Supreme Court, and the government had to repay the bachelors it had collected from. Finally, in 1934, California tried to combat low birth rates with a $25 tax for bachelors, but it went nowhere. The funds from such taxes were typically meant to support some groups of people who were taught to be destitute because the bachelors were not performing their duty, basically women. So orphans, aged spinsters, or widows. Historian Jill Fromm explains from for the historians of Gilded Age and Progressive Era, but in reality, the cultural discourse centers on fears of reductions in ethnic groups among white Americans, a term used publicly by President Theodore Roosevelt in 1903 to push Anglo-Saxons to get married and have children. Today, uh, people who support the rights of men are eager to point out the ways in which the bachelor tax, born from a history of okay, whatever, lives on to penalize modern single men, even if we don't officially have a bachelor's tax on the books in any states. For instance, a single man who makes $75,000 a year and a couple who earns $150,000 would face the same income tax rate. However, if a bachelor earns $75,000 and a married man whose spouse doesn't work also earns $75,000, the bachelor will be in a higher tax bracket. Kari Bromont, a financial writer for Tax Cure, explains unmarried men also lose out on the credits and the deductions that families earn for children. This is crazy. This is crazy, crazy, crazy. This is insane. This is extremely anti-male, especially younger men, sub 30 or so, writes Redditor Analt223. From the men supporters' perspective, which requires some bad math based on deeply gendered stereotypes, young men are more likely to lose out because women are more likely to pair with older men. As for women, Anal 223 assumes younger women are fine since they can easily get married and become pregnant, whereas older divorced women can rely on tax breaks from the children they supposedly already had in previous relationships. Guys, do you see how they've designed the system to literally go against men? No one is disputing the fact that unmarried men without children can also be in need of financial support, just that you don't have to create a supposed bachelor tax out of thin air to fit a specific narrative of male victimhood. So before you go down the Reddit rabbit hole or advocated against tax breaks that serve the working poor, and maybe spend time finding yourself a good accountant. This was actually written by a woman, Laura Vinopal, and she is a writer and stand-up comedian based out of New York. So this is very, very interesting. This is very, very interesting. Clearly she is like, there's this is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy. Here you have a woman, and obviously she has an attitude. She has like a bit of an attitude towards men, but she's clearly pointing out how unsuccessful these taxes against men have been over time. And it's like you have to realize that this is what's happening. You're looking, we have this happening in the United States right now. China has extremely low birth rates, and I'm telling you guys, what's coming next is a bachelor's tax. Because you look at how China operates, and what's coming next is a bachelor's tax. Which is amazing. The Gen Zers in China, they're basically laying flat on the ground, and they're posting it all over social media. Lay flat. The Chinese cannot do anything about this, and these guys are, they can't find jobs. They're becoming professional children, where they're being paid to just do chores around the house and be children at home. Like, this is how bad it is in China right now. And with the birth rates falling, the Chinese are trying to find different ways to get young people to have children. They've gotten rid of the one-child policy, and it's still not resulting in rising birth rates. Their population is declining rapidly, and this is how it ultimately will work out. Bachelor taxes. They're going to have bachelor taxes, and they're going to tax single unmarried men at higher rates. And women, of course, can always run and get married. Of course, the leftover women are going to also feel it pretty hard. But keep in mind, men do whatever they have to do to survive. So a man will take whatever job he has to get, and he'll basically do that and make an income. And of course, the Chinese government needs to take care of an aging population. They need money for the state. So what are they going to do? They're just going to take that money from the men. And China's society has heavily moved towards digital currency. So, most of what happens in China right now is digital. They don't even use a lot of cash there anymore. They use their phones. They have these super apps over in China where they can basically order a cab, order food, do all of these things just from one place. And it's very intriguing. It's very intriguing when you consider this, because you quickly realize that they can just take the money, because everything is so digitalized there. By the way, guys, don't forget that we have another channel. I have another channel called Angry, where I discuss gaming, anime, geek stuff, nerd stuff, real world stuff, and whatever else interests me. There's a link to it in the description of the video. You can go and check it out, support my work. There's a bunch of great content over there. And if you want even more videos like the one you're listening to right now, I have another channel called Men Walking Away, and there's a link to that channel in the description of the video. There's a ton of videos on there. You can find a link to this chat, to Men Walking Away, as well as my other channel I just mentioned, both linked in the description of the video. You can go subscribe to these channels and check them out, support my work. The United States and China are rolling out bachelor taxes. What do you guys think regarding this? I want to hear your thoughts on this. Let's talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA Men Walking Away. And cheers.